Hi everyone, it's Sam from Sitemate. In this video, we're going to take a look at setting up a ratio chart inside of Dashpivot. The ratio chart is used to track and compare groups of forms together. Common examples include tracking defects, so how many defects are open versus in progress versus closed, or incidents. How many incidents are we having, who's reporting them, what projects are they occurring on, that type of thing. So we're going to look at an example in this video, looking at setting up a ratio chart to track defects. But just keep in mind as we go that you can actually set up a ratio chart for any of the templates that you have set up in your Dashpivot account. So it could be defects or incidents, but it could also be site inspections, it could be daily reports, it could be pre-starts, it could be extensions of time, it could be variations, it could be timesheets. There's many things that you can use the ratio chart to track, but we're only going to look at one example in this video. So here we have a defect management workflow set up in Dashpivot. We have a couple of forms already created, and they're sitting in each of our workflow columns. And the way that this information is laid out is great for seeing the status of these defects, what stage they're all up to. But maybe we want to visualize this in a different way, where we want to see which subcontractors were involved or responsible for these defects, or what areas are these defects in. We can't really visualize that from this view. We have the register view option, which is pretty handy. You can see all of this information, and you can read it all line by line. But if you've got 100 defects or 200 defects, being able to identify in bulk what the overarching pattern is, it's really not easy to do it from this view. And that's why we have the ratio chart. So we're going to go to Analytics now and set up a ratio chart and dig a little bit deeper into our data and visualize it. So we're in the Analytics section and we have a quality dashboard already set up. We're now going to go into the dashboard and create a chart. So there's nothing here yet, so we need to click Add Chart. And the type of chart we're going to create is the ratio. So it's the third one, and it tells us that we should select this item if we want to compare groups of forms. So let's go ahead and do that. There's going to be a prompt where we need to select the template source. So in this case, let's pick our defect management workflow template. And as soon as we make a selection, we get our pie chart. It's not all that interesting yet. We still need to apply some settings in the settings block. So we've picked our source. We can define our time frame. At the moment, we're not too worried. We're just going to look at all of the defects. But you could, if you wanted to, filter this down and only consider all of the defects recorded in a particular month or last quarter, this type of thing. There's actually quite a lot of options here. And the way that we want to show it, we're going to display it initially as a pie chart. And we have a breakdown selector here. So this is where we want to choose what parameter we want to group our forms by. And let's see what that looks like. So let's click on workflow columns to begin with. This is some metadata that is sitting behind the form. As you'll recall, all of our forms were sitting in different columns. And we could manually count up these forms. I guess there's 10 forms here in total, and we could work out the percentages on our own manually. But with the ratio chart, it's great because we can just hover on any of these segments in the pie, and we can see that there's 3 or 30% of our forms are sitting in the closed column of the workflow. We have 6 in the identified and 1 in progress. So that's just a direct reflection of our workflow. But we can break it down by other parameters as well. We have other metadata like who created the defect form, and then we have other list fields displayed here. So if we have on our template, and we have that here, we have the subcontractors involved, the suppliers involved, and then the status. So we could choose any of these. Let's pick the subcontractors involved, and you can see the pie chart here, the ratio chart, is breaking it down slightly differently. So the colors represent different things now. So we've got a couple of defects from XYZ, a couple from Terry's Concreting, a couple from Guideline, and then from ABC Formwork. This is where the bulk of our defects are coming from. So it's giving us some insight which would have been really hard to extract from looking purely at the workflow or the register view. So really handy to be able to see that. And at the moment we're showing this as a pie chart, but we could change it and visualize it as a bar chart. So let's change it to a vertical bar chart. You can see it's showing us very similar information, but this is giving us a feel for the volume, because on the y-axis we can actually see the number of forms that have been filled out, which is pretty handy. We can also display this as a horizontal bar chart, depending on your preference. It's just got the x and y axes just inverted from the vertical bar chart. So it's the number of forms along the x-axis and the categorization or the breakdown along the top here. And we have some sorting options if you choose the horizontal or vertical bar chart. You can sort it alphabetically, as we see here. So we have A, G, T, and X. But if we sort it by volume, it's now showing us the most defect forms down to the least defect forms, based on the variable that we're looking at, which is subcontractors involved. But you could change that to workflow columns or any of those other breakdown items and see what that looks like. In addition to the settings block, we have a filter block down the bottom, and this is where we can specify exactly what data we want to consider on our chart. So maybe we only want to look at the subcontractors involved for ABC formwork. So now we're only looking at the defects that have been categorized where the subcontractors involved is just ABC formwork, and then we can see we're still breaking down by the workflow column, so we can see which ones or what the volume is of the defects that have been identified versus which ones have been closed. So the ratio chart is really showing us the relationship between these groups of forms, and you can apply as many filters as you'd like. It's for this reason, the filtering and the breaking down. You'll notice that not all of your fields will show up here. It's only metadata about the form, so the workflow column and created by. And if you're creating these charts at the company level, you'll also see project and team in the breakdown and filter options. But you'll see any of the lists that you have in your template. So we often recommend that if there's a way to standardize the information getting recorded using drop-down menus or multiple choice questions on your form, that's going to really pay off when it comes to breaking that information down in the analytics and with the different types of charts that you have, because Dashpivot can read that standardized information that's coming in. So as an example, if you were recording, if you had your own defect management workflow set up and you had a text field for location, we'd actually recommend, instead of using a text field, that you use a list field and then list all of the options that could be selected. It might be zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and so on. And that means that later on, if you come into your ratio chart, you could break down by location, and then you'd see different colors and different bars for the different areas. So it's just another way of breaking down your data and gaining some insights from what is displayed. Two last things to note in this video. You can change the name of the chart. So this, we might want to say, let's call this chart defects for ABC formwork, because yes, we're tracking our defects and we're only looking at the defects relating to ABC formwork. So let's make that the name, and that will save. And then, as I mentioned, you can create these charts both at a team level, which is what we've done in this video, but also at a company level. And if you do it at a company level, you get additional options in the breakdown and filter sections, because you can break that information down by the project or the team. So you've got a little bit more control over the specific information that you're looking at, which is important when you're considering all of the data that's being collected across the whole company. So that concludes this video. If you get stuck, you can send us a message via live chat. We also have some online articles with some additional detail if you want to have a read. And as always, thanks for watching.